it's just like you look over and you just see this giant world of wonder, and it's like it's amazing because it's on our planet, and like you said, like we know more about Mars than we do about Antarctica, and like, you know, they've been making discoveries like with, you know, where they're saying that basically there's like an under ice like river system, and there's like lakes and all of that beneath the ice. Like what kind of research have we gone into with that in the past like 10 years, 5 years? Because I know that there has been some rumblings about it, but
yeah, so I mean, Chris Gardner, who's at the Byrd Center, and Joel Barker, who's here, he's now at the University of Minnesota, were part of a project called SALSA.
Okay.
You have to have a creative name if you're going to do Antarctic research. And the project was to drill a subglacial lake. And so they drilled through the ice, and they ended up puncturing into this lake. And there's a whole ecosystem that's there that had really not been explored before. And so that whole project is to go ahead and document what was found in that ice, in that lake.
And I've seen like the footage from, I think, like an Australian research group that went down there and put like a camera down beneath the like thick ice layer, and like you could see like how the vegetation down there just looked completely different. And like it just makes you think like how much of like beneath the ice like do we actually like, I don't know, like I guess like my question is, would it be possible to live in Antarctica? Like, I mean, like like to have like a city almost, like a civilization. Like, is there parts of Antarctica that are habitable to people?
So there's nothing that sustains life in Antarctica. Everything has to be brought in.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't have a dairy farm.
Yeah.
You can't grow a garden. Right. So I'm saying no, because there's nothing there that is going to sustain life unless you bring it in.
Yeah.
That's my vote.
I mean, we do have the city. McMurdo is a city,
do.
But, you know, as was mentioned, that everything comes in on a ship, and all the waste goes out on a ship.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess your best example, if you want to see a sustained having to support themselves there, is something like the Shackleton expedition, where by no choice of their own, and you can see how tenuous that was, because you had no way to heat, short of your own body heat, and you were trying to subsist on the ocean is the source of the ecosystem there, except for microbes. So they had to eat whatever was available, seal or penguin.
Right.
So it
or
would be
birds,
very
maybe.
difficult. Yeah.
I just don't. So I vote no, only in that you can't, without outside support.
Yeah.
You know, so I think McMurdo is staffed year round now.
Yes.
I mean, there at some points in time, there are more people there than others, but it's not because they're, you know, out farming the field and raising the animals and whatever, you know, it's because everything's brought in and shipped out.
So, is there any is there any place without snow in Antarctica?
Oh,
like,
yes.
is there like, you know, rock quarries or, you know, little lake reserves or anything like that? Or is it just straight ice?
Yeah, so I think the percentage is about 2% of the continent is unglaciated. Probably the most famous part is the McMurdo Dry Valleys.
Yeah.
So we've had a number of research teams that have worked there. This is an area that most of Antarctica is a desert, which people don't think about because you see these pictures of ice sheets.
Yeah.
But there's less than 10 inches of precip that fall a year. And so what happens is it generally doesn't melt, so it just stacks up.
Yeah.
But it's considered a cold desert. And in this place, most years there's no precip. So you have a space devoid of any ice. You can see on the mountaintops glaciers that are extending down to the valleys. And maybe for 2 to 3 weeks a year, you get water that it gets warm enough the water can melt. So you get these lakes that emerge.
Yeah.
And it's considered one of the ecological research sites, a fragile ecosystem that NSF has been studying for more than 25 years because it's so unique.
Yeah, because I know in the footage from Operation Highjump with Byrd that they had found, like, there's a video of them running into this, you know, body of water. So, like, yeah, I was wondering, like, how common are those, I guess. I guess it just was, like, one that they just happened to stumble upon and it happened to be, like, the time. So it's kind of like you can only see those at certain times of the year kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I guess I'll go into Operation Highjump. Like, you know, it's obviously a huge pot of mythology and, you know, conspiracy and all that. So, I mean, I guess I would ask you guys who do this for a living, like, was it more than just military operations, or was that just simply it? From all of the information you guys have seen, from Byrd's own writings, from all of it, like, was it just them preparing for a potential Cold War situation, or were they down there for other sorts of research?
Well, so the first thing to say about that is when Byrd stopped self-funding his own expeditions, and they began to be funded by the U.S. military, so that starts in 1939.
Yes.
That documentation of all of that stuff lives in the U.S. National Archives. So the amount of material that we have in our collection, starting with 1939 and to the present, well, to the 80s, for Byrd is a lot less. All that said, the Operation Highjump thing and its relation to the hollow Earth and all that stuff. I get questions about that every year. I guess I have had a couple this year. Usually, so what people want to know is where's the diary from that, because that's supposedly online.
Right.
I saw it online. It must be true. We don't have that, and in fact, we don't have anything in our collection that substantiates any of that.
Yeah.
So, based on what little I know, I've had researchers come here. We pull all of the material. It's
so you've
open.
done like deep dives into this topic in particular.
No, I haven't actually.
Okay.
I've let my researchers do the deep dive.
So they did. Okay.
They do the deep dive.
And what have they?
They walk away bummed because they don't find this
the
particular
smoking gun.
No one's found that here that I'm aware of. If they found it here, I'm pretty sure we'd know.
Laura makes an important point, though, on how do you arrive at fact or backing up a claim, which is, and we had a great conversation with a question Laura received, I think it was on a Friday after somebody had a bar argument on a Thursday night about a snack food that was purported to have been brought on a Byrd expedition. And it was great. The answer you can give is, it wasn't a yes or no answer Laura could give. I think the answer was, we have no evidence in the collection to support that product was ever brought to Antarctica. It wasn't yes it was or no it wasn't. There's no evidence that it was.
Right.
And
so
you have to be able to tie it
answer.
to evidence.
That's always my answer.
Yeah.
If we don't, look, I won't guess and I won't make it up because somebody out there knows the truth. And if you do that, you will get caught. So that's just not my way. So that is always my answer. There's no evidence in the Byrd collection to support the idea that the Earth is hollow and that Byrd knew it. Whatever. So that's always that's absolutely true. Just because I can't find it doesn't mean it's not so.
Right. The absence of evidence does not mean evidence of absence. Yeah. But
that's right.
At the same time, it's like, it's a little bit of a stretch, but at the same time, it kind of like it. And I think that's part of the reason that people, especially in this decade, have become more fascinated with polar research, because it's just this big white blob on the map, and everybody's like, there's got to be more than ice and penguins down here, and that's, I guess, what stirred the conversation for so long. But and I know it's hard because there's just without there's so many gaps that need to be filled, and it could easily just be explained away as we could find out maybe something comes to the surface and it just ends up being, no, that wasn't the case. It was, they were just down there for operations. But I mean, I guess that's. I don't know. I've always found it interesting when thinking about Antarctica, and I wanted to ask you guys, since you have the collection here, and I think it's interesting.
Well, we have so many people that have worked down there too. I always tell people you have to trust in the experts that have been there to see it and to help put the puzzle together. And we have tens of people in our building that have been down there 2, 3, 4, 15, 18 times.
Wow.
And so we've had people call with questions, and I said, if you're not willing to trust these multitude of experts that have been down there, I don't really have a better answer for you. Because they've seen it from so many different disciplines, some of them going back all the way to the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the other thing is to remember is that we are not the only polar archives. Right? So again, the mention of the National Archives and documentation is held all over the place. Mm-hmm. So when I know of it, then I point, if we don't have it, then I want you to keep going, keep looking, keep researching, and I try to help people.
And a lot of it is with high jump, and I think the thing that's made people kind of go into it more is the fact that it's so a lot of it is still very classified, and it just, again, it leads to more questions and more, and I guess it gets hard because
Well, I will tell you that the folks who declassify information came here and declassified everything in the Byrd papers, every single thing. So the material that we do have that relates to that, all declassified.
Okay.
So I don't know for sure that that's actually true. I don't know for a fact that there's still a lot of material classified on that. I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
just because they spent weeks here, because we do have some, as I mentioned. They spent weeks here going through all of it and declassified every document that they laid their hands on, and in fact told me that if other material that they had not seen, it's a large collection, 600 boxes of stuff, that we could assume anything additional related to that we would find in our collection would also be declassified.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that you do have information on Operation Highjump that is declassified. What would you say is like the most interesting thing that you've seen from that collection? I mean, I know you haven't gone through all 600 boxes, but I mean, from what you've seen, what was something that was like, oh, that's interesting, Nothing. Yeah, just a lot of...
It's just all logistical. Like, there isn't anything to me that was all that.
Yeah, and I think...
I like the early stuff. I love the early stuff. I like Byrd's handwriting on things. I like all the lists he made. I like all the logistical... this is all very U.S. military. Here are your orders. We're going to do X, Y, Z. It's just, at this point in time, Byrd is really more of a figurehead and less in control. So for me personally, what is there is very much reports and just nothing that really.
Yeah, a lot of hearsay.
Well, it's just not that. I just don't find it to be. There isn't anything there that.
Yeah, it's just a lot of like operations talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nothing that really. Again, have I read every document? I have not. So.
Yeah.
Remember, my job is to help you find the documents you want to read.
Yeah.
And I guess when the U.S. military support comes, things become a lot more standardized.
Yes.
We could talk about what an expedition looks like today, but when they're on their own in the 20s and 30s, you are on your own, self-supporting, you're arranging everything. And now, in the era we're in now, so much of it's been, there's a process you follow. You apply for your application, you have to fill it out well in advance. There's medical checkup they do, dental checkup, depending on where you're going. There's protocols for how your equipment needs to be handled for personal stuff and lab stuff that's going into the field. And all that's done 2 or 3 years ahead of time to provide the safety net and logistics.
Do they provide any training for like how to deal with the cold, I guess? Like, is it kind of like, do they have like a pseudo like space program kind of thing? You know how they like train astronauts how to go to the moon and deal with those climates? Is there anything like that they prepare these explorers, even in modern day, like to kind of give them a sense of what it is going to be like when they set foot on the ice?
Well, I think there's a few things. One is the application process itself, and there's a whole giant manual to follow as you prepare for that. When you get there, there's wraparound services, so they have contractors that handle all the transportation logistics. There's a lot of field support people that are there to make sure everything gets done safely. There might be a mountaineer assigned to your team to make sure that there's certain protocols handled if you're in crevasse fields. There is a safety school that they make sure you're able to do a survival school and stay out overnight. Depending on how far in you're going, there might be additional training required or additional staff that's with you, medical staff or mountaineers. But that's something that wouldn't have been afforded then. They would have had to do it all on their own. Versus NSF now has protocols, the National Science Foundation, that you have to follow to make sure that people are safe in the field.
Yeah, and so I mean, like, how many? You said it takes is it like 3 or 4 years? You said that's like how long on average the process is to from the time you're saying I want to go to Antarctica to the time you actually travel there and set foot on the ice.
As I've talked to more of our teams, it's usually a 3-year process. By the time you figure out what the team is, what you're going to do, study the maps, figure out the travel plan, put the application in. It's going to take 6 to 9 months to review. You get funding back, and then you have to make sure you have all your gear on a boat leaving some harbor probably 6 to 8 months before you're going to need it.
Yeah.
It has to traverse all the way down to Antarctica, get offloaded, and be handled and headed to where you're going at the right time.
And do we usually take like a straight boat ride there, or do we stop at like a port like in South America or something and then refuel and get supplies and then go down, or is it just a straight drive down? I mean, like, I guess my really question is how hard would how long would the trip be like by boat, let's say?
Well, it varies because we have 3 big bases, so most stuff comes into McMurdo or Palmer Station. And Palmer Station is serviced largely by boat. McMurdo can be serviced by boat or by plane. But for McMurdo, if it's big equipment, it's going to come in on the ship because it's more economical to do it that way. If you're personnel or maybe higher value items or food restock, it's going to come in on a plane. And so it depends on what it is, but you have to plan out enough. It's also something where maybe people aren't accustomed to living in Ohio in the suburbs or city, that you just don't click Amazon or go to Walmart or if you're missing something. So if you have a critical ingredient and it breaks, you better be able to service it in the field.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure all those contingencies are planned for, because if you're at that deep field site and it breaks, you've now wasted a lot of money and you have no way to service your equipment.
Yeah, and that's not what a lot of people don't think about, those kind of logistics when talking about like exploration in general, like how much equipment you have to bring, especially nowadays with all the technology that we're using down there. I can imagine like, lugging that stuff around. And that's, I guess, what plays into like the difficulty with, exploring the entire continent is just, being able to move all of that equipment and people and resources. Yeah. I can imagine.